The day my father's attorney read his will out loud, my brother didn't even try to hide his smile. My father had 2 children. He had one bakery that had fed our family for 31 years. And apparently he had already decided, long before any of us knew he was sick, exactly what each of us deserved. My brother got the house. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a finished basement, sitting on a half-acre lot in Asheville, North Carolina. Our childhood home, the place where we both grew up, where Mom used to hang wind chimes on the back porch, where Dad built a tire swing that outlasted 2 decades of weather, appraised at $410,000. I got the bakery, not the building. Dad had sold that to a property management company 8 years earlier and leased it back. I got the business itself. The ovens, the display cases, the recipes, the name. Callaway's Bread and Pastry, established 1993. Current annual revenue, a little under $60,000. Lease on the building, $4,200 a month. I remember sitting in that attorney's office doing the math in my head and feeling the floor tilt underneath me. My brother, I'll call him Reed, leaned over and said quietly enough that the attorney couldn't hear, "You always loved that place more than I did." Dad knew that. He said it like it was a kindness. I was 28 years old. I had been working at Callaway's every weekend since I was 14. I had taken over the morning shift at 23 when Dad's knees got bad. I had developed 6 of the 12 items currently on the menu. I had negotiated the lease renewal 2 years earlier because Dad kept putting it off and the landlord was threatening to go month to month. And I had inherited a business that was, by any honest accounting, one bad quarter away from closing. What I didn't say in that attorney's office, what I couldn't say because I was still in shock, because Dad had been dead for 9 days and I hadn't slept properly on all of them, was that I already knew. I had known for a year that the bakery was struggling. I had watched Dad's hands shake when he looked at the books. I had watched him stop ordering the expensive vanilla and start using imitation. I had watched him let our best employee, a woman named Teresa who'd been decorating cakes there for 11 years, go without much explanation the previous spring. The bakery my father left me was not the bakery of my childhood. It was a business in the last stage before a quiet, undramatic death. Reed sold the house 14 months later for $460,000. Used the money to buy a condo in Charlotte and put the rest in index funds. He texted me a photo of the new place. Granite countertops. A rooftop terrace with a caption, "Dad would have loved this." I didn't respond. By that point, I was sleeping on an air mattress in the back room of the bakery because I had given up my apartment to stop hemorrhaging money, and I was not in the emotional position to engage with that text message. Here is what the first year looked like. I took out a personal loan of $22,000, which combined with my savings gave me roughly $29,000 to work with. I owed the flour supplier 4 months of back invoices. That had been paying slow for longer than I realized. I owed the equipment maintenance company. I owed the city a small business licensing fee that had gone unpaid. After settling those debts, I had $11,000, a working bakery, and no safety net. I cut the menu from 12 items to 7. I eliminated everything that required specialty ingredients I couldn't source cheaply. I kept the sourdough, the morning buns, the honey wheat loaf, the biscuits, the cinnamon rolls, the blueberry scones, and one rotating seasonal item. I extended hours on Friday and Saturday. I posted on Instagram every single day. Not polished content, just real photos of real bread cooling on real wire racks with honest captions. I wrote things like, "This loaf took me 4 tries to get right this week. Try 4 tasted like it was worth it." People responded to that. I don't know exactly why, but they did. I also did something that felt embarrassing at the time, and turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made. I started a weekly bread subscription. $20 a week, you got a loaf of sourdough and 2 pastry items. Picked up Saturday morning. I sold 12 subscriptions the first week. Within 3 months, I had 61. Within 8 months, I had 112 and I had a wait list. By month 10, I was no longer losing money. By month 14, I was making enough to move off the air mattress and rent a studio apartment 2 blocks from the bakery. By the end of year 2, Callaway's had been featured in the Regional Food magazine as one of Western North Carolina's best hidden gems. I framed the article and hung it next to the photo of my dad in his apron that had always been behind the register. I thought about him a lot during those years, not always with sadness, sometimes with something more complicated. A gratitude that came wrapped in frustration because he had believed I could do something I wasn't sure I could do. And he had expressed that belief by handing me an almost failed business instead of just telling me. I also thought occasionally about what it would have looked like if I'd walked away. If I'd locked the door, sold the equipment at auction, paid off the lease early, and just left, started over somewhere else. Some days in that first year, that option looked very appealing. I'm glad I didn't take it. At the end of year 3, I was approached by a woman named Petra Vance, who ran a regional food and hospitality investment group based in Raleigh. She had heard about the subscription model. She wanted to talk about scaling. We met at the bakery on a Tuesday morning before I opened. I made coffee. She looked around at the space, which was small, a little worn, deeply impractical for any kind of serious expansion, and she asked me what I thought the business was actually worth. I told her I didn't know, but I'd been doing the math, and I thought the brand had value independent of the physical location. She smiled in a way that made me think that was the right answer. We talked for 3 hours. She introduced me to 2 colleagues over the following 6 weeks. I hired an attorney, not the same one who had read my father's will, a different one, a woman who specialized in small business transactions and who charged me more per hour than I had ever paid for anything. And I made sure I understood every document before I signed anything. 14 months after that first Tuesday meeting, I sold the Callaway's brand, the subscription business, the recipes, and the name to Petra's Group for $1.4 million. I retained the right to use my own family recipes personally and permanently. I kept a small equity stake that would pay out if they expanded successfully, which they did. There are now 4 Callaway's locations in North Carolina and 1 in Tennessee. I want to be accurate about the numbers here because people always ask, and I find vagueness annoying. After attorney fees, taxes, and paying off the remainder of the personal loan, I walked away with just under $900,000. I put $600,000 into a combination of index funds and a high-yield savings account. I used $200,000 to buy a small house in Black Mountain, 20 minutes from Asheville. I kept the rest liquid. I was 32 years old and I owned my home outright and I had no debt. I did not tell my family right away. I should explain something about my family dynamics, because the money is not actually the main story here. My mother and I have always had a relationship based on a specific kind of distance. She loved us, I believe that, but she expressed it primarily through worry and instruction rather than warmth. When I was small, this felt suffocating. When I got older, I learned to navigate it. After my father died, it calcified into something harder, because she was grieving and I was grieving, and we were grieving differently, and neither of us was very patient with the other. Reed was always her easier child. I don't say that with bitterness, it's simply true. He was sociable and agreeable and never went through a difficult phase that lasted more than a few months. I was quieter and more stubborn and spent most of my 20s making decisions she didn't understand and couldn't endorse. She didn't know what to do with me. I didn't always know what to do with myself. After the sale, I told her and Reed at a Sunday dinner in her kitchen in Asheville, the same house where we'd grown up, which Reed had sold and which a young family now lived in, but my mother had moved into a rental nearby, and she'd recreated the kitchen feel as closely as she could with the same curtains and the same dish towel hanging from the oven handle. I told them I had sold the business for a significant amount of money, and that I was doing well. My mother put down her fork. "How much?" she asked. I told her the gross sale price, not the net. I wasn't ready to get into the math with her, but the number Petra's Group had paid. Reed went very quiet. My mother said, "That money came from your father's business, our family business. That means it belongs to this family." I want to be careful here about how I describe what happened next, because I've told this story to a few people and I've noticed that it's easy for it to sound like a dramatic scene, and it was more than that. It was also just incredibly sad. She wasn't wrong that it had been our family business. She wasn't wrong that my father had built it from nothing before I was born, that she had worked the register on weekends when Reed and I were small, that it had paid for our school clothes and our vacations, and, in a lean year when I was 12, not much else. But she was asking me to give her money that I had earned. Not money that had appeared because of inheritance. Money that existed because I had slept on an air mattress and cut the menu and posted photos of bread on Instagram at 6 in the morning and sat in meetings with investors and hired an attorney and done the work. I said, Mom, Dad left me the business, not the proceeds of what I might one day do with it if I managed to save it. He left me something that was failing. I spent 3 years making it into something that wasn't. She said, You couldn't have done any of it without what he built. I know that, I said. I know that. But that's not what we're talking about, Reed said very carefully. I think what Mom means is that it would be a good gesture, given everything, to share some of it with the family, given what Dad would have wanted. I looked at my brother. He had $460,000 from selling a house he had lived in for exactly 0 days. He had a condo with granite countertops. He had index funds. I said, I'm not going to do that. My mother's face did something complicated. She said, Then I don't know who you've become. I drove home to Black Mountain. I sat in my driveway for a long time. I cried, not because I thought I was wrong, but because being right doesn't protect you from grief. And watching your mother look at you like you're a stranger is its own specific kind of loss. In the weeks after that dinner, my mother called 3 times. The first call was more of the same. The argument about family obligation, about what my father would have wanted, about how my success had come from what they had all sacrificed. The second call was quieter, and I thought for a moment we might be moving towards something more honest. Then she mentioned that Reed's condo building had just assessed a major special assessment fee, $40,000, and he didn't have the liquidity to cover it comfortably. That was the third call, she said. He needs help, and you're the only one who can give it. I said, he can take a HELOC on the condo. It has equity, his credit is good. She said, That's not the point. I said, I know it's not the point. The point is that you want me to give Reed $40,000 because his investment property had an unexpected expense, and I'm not going to do that. She hung up. I sat with that for a long time. I'm still sitting with it, honestly. I'm not someone who finds estrangement easy or clean. I grew up in a family where Sunday dinners meant something, and I missed them in a way I didn't expect to. I missed my father. I missed the version of my mother who existed before he died. I miss being 20 and working the Saturday morning shift and not yet knowing that things would become this complicated. But I also know what I know. I know that when the bakery was failing, nobody called. Nobody offered to help cover the supplier invoices. Nobody asked how I was sleeping, even when the answer was on an air mattress, not well. Nobody said, That seems like a lot to carry, let us know if you need anything. The money only became a family matter once there was money. I'm not telling this story to make anyone into a villain. My mother is not a villain. Reed is not a villain. They are people who got used to a particular arrangement and couldn't reorganize themselves around the fact that it had changed. But I want to be honest, I did not give them money. I have not given them money. I have had 2 brief and painful conversations with my mother in the past year, both of which ended without resolution. Reed and I exchanged texts at Christmas and birthdays and nothing else. My father's name is still on the bakery. There are 4 locations in North Carolina now and 1 in Tennessee, and the logo is still the same wheat sheaf design he had drawn on a napkin in 1993. When I drive past the original location on my way into Asheville, sometimes I slow down. I think about what he would say about all of it. I think he would probably say something infuriating and wise in equal measure, the way he always did. I think he would tell me that I was right and that I was also being too hard on everyone, including myself. I think he might apologize for handing me something broken and expecting me to figure it out. But I also think, and this is the part I return to, on the quiet evenings in my house in Black Mountain, with the mountains doing what they do at dusk, going dark and blue and enormous, I think he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew I would stay. He knew I would fight for it. He knew, in the way that parents sometimes know things about their children that the children don't yet know about themselves, that I would find a way. I just wish he told me he believed that while he was still alive to tell me. That would have been enough. It would have been more than enough. There's a version of this story where I give them the money and everyone goes home satisfied. My mother hugs me at Sunday dinner. Reed and I text about more than just birthdays. The kitchen in her rental still smells like it always did, and I sit at that table without feeling like a guest who outstayed her welcome. I used to think about that version a lot. But here's what I've learned. Slowly and not always gracefully, the outcomes in our lives are not random. They follow directly from the choices we make when no one is watching and nothing is guaranteed. When I was sleeping on that air mattress and cutting the menu down to 7 items and posting photos of bread at 6 in the morning, nobody told me it would work. There was no promise attached to any of it. I kept going because I believed the work itself had integrity, and that integrity was worth protecting even when the result was uncertain. That's not a small thing. I didn't understand it when I was doing it. I only understood it afterward, looking back at all the moments when I could have walked away and didn't. What my father gave me wasn't a bakery. It was a problem that required everything I had: my honesty about what wasn't working, my willingness to ask for help from the right people, my ability to sit with uncertainty for months at a time without letting it make me reckless. Those are things you can't inherit. You can only develop them by actually needing them. Reed didn't have to develop them. He got a check. I'm not saying his life is worse for it. I genuinely don't know. But I know that when Petra's group wired the final payment and I sat in my car outside the bakery for 20 minutes just breathing, what I felt was not just relief. It was something closer to self-knowledge. I had found out what I was capable of under real pressure, and that information belongs to me in a way that no one can touch. My mother said I had become someone she didn't recognize. I think she was right, and I think that's okay. The person she recognized was 22 and deferential and didn't fully trust her own judgment yet. I don't want to be that person anymore. The hardest part of all of it, harder than the debt, harder than the air mattress, harder than the conversation at her kitchen table, is accepting that doing the right thing doesn't always produce a clean ending. I made sound decisions. I treated people fairly. I paid Tilly Sutter for a fee when the subscription list grew past 60 names because she'd given me the idea, even though I wasn't obligated to. I hired the attorney. I read every document. I was careful and honest and thorough. And I still lost something. My family, at least the version of it I grew up inside, is gone. The mountains outside my window in Black Mountain go dark at dusk in a way that still surprises me. I've lived here 2 years and I'm still not used to it. How fast the light goes, how complete the dark is afterward. My father would have liked this house. He would have sat on this porch and been quiet in the good way he had. The way that meant he was paying attention. I think the best thing I can do with everything I've built is stay honest about how I built it. Not because I want credit. Because someone else is out there sleeping on a metaphorical air mattress right now, doing the unglamorous work, wondering if it's going to be worth it. It is, but only if you do it right.